How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, we're going to continue covering the Nancy Guthrie case. Now, granted, guys, I've done a lot of videos on this, so we're going to kind of keep it moving forward. Right now, we're about an hour and change away from that deadline, the final deadline, the second deadline, February 9th, 2026. So right now we are about an hour and change away. I thought what we could do today is me and Denise can kind of talk about the toll something like this could take on a family going through this. But before we do this, we do have a recent video that Savannah did put out about 1:30 Mountain Time that I would like to break down before we go into our dialogue. Now, guys, I've done the video breakdowns for the other videos, but I just wanted to go ahead and play this one, and then we'll move forward with the today's show. So this is her most recent plea. And again, if you're not familiar with this case, I advise you watch the rest of my playlist because I just want to keep this moving.
Hi there, everybody. I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers and the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I, and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers and that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock, trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation, and we need your help.
So there's a lot I want to say here. I may have to play the video again, but I'd like to ask, right? I definitely, so watching the other videos, you see that they're a bit defeated to some extent, but they're trying to remain strong. I think in this video, there's frustration. I saw it at the very beginning. There's some frustration. And I also feel this is, in their mind, a last-ditch effort. Like, we're going to give it one last shot because there's a moment, and I'll show you exactly when, where she's like, we need help. But what's your thoughts? I have a feeling it's grim, to be honest with you.
I agree. I mean, and how old is the mom? She's like 84, 85? 84 years old. It's going to be hard for her to survive this, even in the most ideal circumstances. I mean, it's been a week or so now, and
day 9, I think.
And imagine she's on medication. She had a pacemaker. I mean, it doesn't sound like she's probably been taken care of, and this is just really a sad situation.
Yeah. So I just want to break down the video briefly. I'll show you a couple key things. So I'm gonna pause it a few times, but let me show you.
Hi there, everybody.
So right at the very beginning, I'm going to tell you guys, it's going to be frustration, right? I definitely see that.
I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare.
I think right there, that was frustration, that deep breath, right. And then I want to show you something else.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers and the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I. and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers. And that
yeah, the key word here, somehow, some way. So that makes me think it's whether she's live or whether she's not, somehow, some way, she's receiving the prayers.
Yeah.
But I want to show you something.
that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help.
So I wanted to say something. So you notice how she said, we believe our mom is still out there. She did not say that her mom is still alive. It's what's not said. And then she takes this breath like, we need your help. So to compose herself and to say we need help. But then there's a moment where I feel it's like she knows it's a last ditch effort.
Yeah, like it's hopeless almost.
Yeah. I'll tell you where I feel it. I'll show you it.
Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock, trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation and we need your help.
So I don't know if the hour of desperation is like a key. Let me just pause it. Like a key word that, because I know it looks like she may look at a clock. I don't think this is scripted, guys. I think it's coming from the top of her head. It's more genuine. I think that, you could see she's trying to gather her thought for each sentence. It's not like she's trying to put everything together at once. She's stopping at each sentence, putting together her thoughts. I think when she says hour of desperation, I think for some reason, maybe she looked at a clock or something in the distance before that came out, or it could be a word that they may have agreed that she should say because she's looking somewhere. And it looks like the thought of hour of desperation just comes to her, whether it was something she should have said or whether the clock triggered it. But I'm going to show you where exactly I feel she just may be going through the motions now. And it's this one little section here. It's this deep breath. And it's not a breath of like a sigh of relief. I'll show you it. I can't rewind on this. So I'm going to have to just watch the video when I stop it. That's the part where I feel she's kind of going through the motions, because another thing is when she's saying law enforcement's doing everything and, we're going to try to do it this way. She's also shaking her head back and forth as if she may not believe 100% into what she's saying. That's, a little body language 101. It's not congruent with agreement. It's congruent with, maybe in her mind, subconsciously, she doesn't really agree, or she may not even believe that this here is even going to help.
Yeah, or that nothing is working.
Yeah, that's actually a better phrase. Thank you for that. Let me show you.
Hi there, everybody. I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare.
So that was frustration. That's frustration because it goes right into another week of a nightmare. That's frustration because it's out of their control. All right, hold on.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers and the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I, and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers.
And that's when she starts shaking her head no. That's a concern for me. And guys, maybe I'm wrong, but that's a concern for me because she starts to shake her head on that belief that we believe my mother somehow, somewhere is receiving it. And I think in her mind, I think no one accepts the fact, but I think she knows that something could be grim.
Yeah, I think so too.
Let me see.
And that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock, trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask.
That's the part. You see her lift her shoulder up right before she said that. So I'm coming on. This is kind of like, I don't know what else to do.
Exactly. I'm in desperation.
Yeah, that's the part. So I just want to
you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation.
Yeah, you saw that moment there?
And we need your help.
Yeah.
So one last time, and then we'll go into our show. One last time.
Hi there.
Then we'll go into the show.
Everybody. I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare.
That's the frustration.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers.
And that's sincerity. She really is thankful. You could see even her eyes closed for a longer period of time. Like, you know, she's so grateful for the support that she's received.
And the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I, and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers.
Like, so maybe even the shaking of the head, because at that point, it's maybe also dealing with the generalized disbelief of it all.
Yeah. I can see that for sure.
Because it comes up as soon as she starts talking about her mother, you know, like what's happened, like technically what happened to her mother.
And that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help.
So she does believe that her mom is still out there, but doesn't know if whether she believes the mom has passed or if she's still alive. I mean, it hasn't been clear what she really believes. We've been guessing, and a lot of us think that she actually may believe that her mom has passed. So now it's a matter of, you know, can we at least get the remains? We thought that was true in the last video. Now, guys, this is just the assumption if it's a kidnapping, because she also could be doing this video because they've been focusing so much on a kidnapper, focusing so much on kidnapping that they thought they were talking to a kidnapper. Now this could be just, hey, let's do a plea to the public. What are we doing? What about if it's not? What about this is all a hoax? Let's do a plea to the public now as well, because she's not talking to any kidnappers here. She's talking to us.
Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock, trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you,
watch the pause here,
that you report to law enforcement.
She's going to look off to the side.
We are at an hour of desperation.
So,
and we need your help.
I don't know if hour of desperation is like a key word. She could be looking at a clock and then just realizing, oh, and then it comes to her, because I don't think this is scripted. So I think that just came to her, or it's something that, you know, sometimes they have these things where you got to say something to show that you're under some level of control. You know, hour of desperation had to be plugged in, but I think she looked at something on the corner, maybe gave her a time, and then she said hour of desperation. But you see the shoulder go up?
I think she's at the point she doesn't know what to do. I mean, and you can certainly understand it.
And I think maybe the back and forth is just when you see the key areas that she starts to move her head this way, I think it's disbelief for what she's going through.
Yeah, I believe it. You could understand why.
Oh, yes. So, guys, I'm just going to go over. You guys already know the background for this. I just want to go over, give Denise some questions here. And, guys, just so you know, an update from yesterday was they did do us searches. We already know of Annie's house, Annie and Tommaso, and also Nancy's, and they are compliant. Their searches, I guess, just weeding out. But their searches that both Tommaso and Annie are willing for their house, because no people trying to get at them, but they're willing. Their door has been open, and also Nancy's. I mean, they really want to find her, and then also they got security there now, which is smart. To protect the integrity, because you never know when you're going to have to go back, when you're going to have to maybe create a warrant and then increase the scope of it. So it's good that they hold. Definitely Nancy's house, as if it's, you can seal it, but then instead of unseal it, just keep it secured, So if you have to unseal it, keep it secured. Okay. So when you look at the Guthrie family right now, you see a united front. They stand together in videos. They speak carefully and they project strength and control. But what we don't see is what's happening behind that image in the first 48 hours after Nancy vanished from what should have been the safest place in her world, which was her own home. In a situation like this, a family can either be pulled together or quietly pulled apart. The pressure and fear can create a kind of invisible divide. On camera, they have to show unity, but behind the scenes, there may be very real tension and pain. Sometimes that starts with the blame game. Who dropped mom off? Who argued she was safe living alone? Who saw a red flag and didn't push harder? Even if nobody truly did anything wrong, people may try to protect themselves from unbearable guilt by pushing responsibility outwards. Now, on the other side, some families work towards a painful kind of acceptance, not acceptance of what happened as okay, but an acceptance that this is the reality that they have to operate in, because acceptance is an agreement. There's a lot of things I have to accept that I don't agree with, but the acceptance, I think, is what helps you move forward in whatever it is you have to deal with.
Yes.
So that acceptance can give them the strength to stand side by side, look into the camera, and do the things that might help bring their loved one home, even while they're falling apart inside. And when you watch the Guthrie's plea, so this is the very first one and the second one, you can see that effort to present a united, determined front, regardless of the storm that maybe happened privately. So my first question to you, Denise, is based on like shock, belief. Can this be real? Very beginning of the case. When a loved one is taken violently from their own home, as in the Nancy Guthrie case, how does the brain even start to process that? What do those first 48 hours look like mentally for a family like the Guthries? And how different might that internal reality be from the unified front we see in public?
Well, the interesting thing with any sort of trauma, in this case, it's a kidnapping, the first thing, because obviously it's a shock to the system, we go to our mind to try to figure it out. And the mind can't figure it out because the mind has no idea why this just happened. And so there's a lot of disbelief and there's a lot of shock and horror and fear. And it's very likely that families actually will come in and they'll start fighting with each other, because it's just a lot of just sort of projecting all their fears onto each other. It looks like in this case, they're trying to, the siblings are trying to work together and trying to figure out what's going on. But it's hard to make sense out of this because it's almost, for me, almost unheard of that like a 84-year-old gets kidnapped. I mean, this is something that I don't know that I've ever heard in my lifetime. And it's certainly unfathomable that this even happened.
Yeah, and when I look at them on camera, I mean, obviously we see the outcome, but the first thing I said, I wonder what it was like, especially when they showed the first video, what was happening behind the scenes before they all came into an agreement to make that video, because I find it hard to believe that they all were going to be so willing right away to make that video, knowing that, you may have some that want to concede and give them what they want. Some that say, no, hold on, be more strategic.
Right.
And then all of a sudden that's standing on absolutes, by the way. They're not just, they're on absolutes, extreme conflict. And I'm sure to be able to get them to sit down and agree to this was definitely, I think would have to be some effort.
Right. And when law enforcement comes in, whether or not you're buying into their plan, maybe I don't think that this is the right way. I think we should do it this way. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, I'm going to mention as we go forward, because I learned a lot. I did a video, guys, on how payment would be made in this case. And basically, a lot of it, the onus is really on the family, where the government or the feds, they're going to kind of assist, keep track of where the money goes. But payments, all that stuff is really on the family. I mean, there's other things, like big corporations can help out, like maybe NBC can help out. There's also, I found out, some type of kidnapper insurance where you could put the money up and get the money back. But this is tough on every level, because the choice has so much of a consequence to it that, you're going to have emotions involved in decision making, but you're going to have the law enforcement who's guiding it, who is not going to lead by emotion. Right. And sometimes that is also going to conflict, because God forbid they do make the wrong decision. I mean, you really don't know.
Right. And knowing that they're not making it from emotion makes you feel bad, because
they're not invested.
Exactly. They're not invested.
I've had like when I overseeing a correctional facility, sometimes people will say you're cold. It's like, no, guys, I'm trying to make a rational decision. If I was that involved, believe it or not, I wouldn't be able to do the job objectively. And that's what they're there for, is to be objective and help the family go through whatever these choices are going to be. Now, I think in my mind, as I said, I definitely could see a back and forth as to what's the best route to go, because they will all have their own justifications, not excuses, justifications as to why. But ultimately, it would be, well, we want to do what's best for mom and the people that, if this is, by the way, we're only acting as if this is a kidnapping, but there's a lesson here just in case. So, because it may not be. I think the video we saw today may just be another route, just in case it's not. But the kidnappers know you want to do what's best for your loved one, so they take advantage of that through pressure, through deadlines, and I think that's when law enforcement kind of comes in and says, "Be advised, that's being used in an effort as it's weaponized." Scared to say, but they're using your connection to your loved one as a weapon.
Yep.
All right. Sorry, again, Denise.
I was going to say, and they're also hoping that they start to fight amongst themselves. So they start to doubt law enforcement, and and that they come up with the money, because now they're all getting desperate.
Right, because if you think about it, it really is a power of control.
It really is.
Control, react, and at one point, I think that's what the objective is for law enforcement. That comes in, it's like, okay, so we can't always react. We have to slowly react into an effort that gets us some control eventually.
Yeah.
And that's what people may not want to do, because they think the immediate thing to do is react and save. It's like, hold on, because you don't know if first they even have your mother. There's no proof of life here. They've never given you a proof, not that we know of. So one thing that makes the Guthrie case uniquely brutal is who Nancy's daughter is. Savannah isn't just a daughter begging for her mother back. She's also the co-anchor of a major national morning show, someone who understands cameras, framing, and how every word will be replayed and dissected. Right now, the family has to stay mission focused. They can't afford to burn energy worrying about how they look as public figures or whether they're performing their pain the right way for the audience. At this stage, being a TV personality can't be the priority. They're human beings, and the public understands human reaction. Their focus has to be what's on mission critical, following the guidance of law enforcement and the FBI, being consistent and clear in any messages directed at the kidnapper, and not saying anything they've been asked to avoid. Even though they're not really in control of what's happening to Nancy, they still have to project some control in how they speak and act for themselves, for investigators, and possibly for whoever is holding her. If they spend too much time managing public perception, they risk losing sight of that core mission. Now, Denise, for a family like the Guthries, living this trauma in real time, but also carrying that mission-focused role on camera, how does that split reality of being both devastated family and public figure affect their ability to grieve, think clearly, or even sleep? Because in the first two videos, you always see Savannah in the middle, center. which is usually where your attention's going to be, and everybody else kind of be the support role. And then you do have Cameron, who did one on his own, which I thought was unique. I didn't see one from Annie. And then you got Savannah, I think, just doing the plea to the public because, you know, just in case, or, hey, guys, it's the last hour, you know, got to do something.
Yes.
But what's your thought of, you know, kind of being that public figure? Does it add any extra stress?
Well, I imagine it's adding a little bit more attention, media attention, because people can connect with her because they know her from television, you know. So it's an added pressure, and I imagine she's got to try to bring some sort of whatever she can muster professionalism to try to get the story out and try to get some help. I mean, what a terrible situation, and they're probably, you know, using the fact that she's got on-camera experience to really sort of bring this to the forefront and hopefully get some help.
And what's crazy is what could be seen as her strength also could have been what made her vulnerable.
Yeah. I've wondered that.
You know, if that, you know, again, only if we're making the assumption it's a kidnapping. I mean, when I first did my very first show on this case, I thought it was a burglary gone wrong or maybe a possible sex offender. But you know what? If this is what people think, I just wanted to, you know, create a video with that angle. Which is what we're doing now. But yeah, so having that public persona does add a little bit more, but I think that's why they have her center, because she's no stranger to putting herself out there. And for people to know that it's not easy to put yourself out to the world at any level, especially this.
No, it really isn't.
You know,
when you're hurting and you're desperate, and then you're trying to also be professional and polished. You know, because
not say nothing wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So when a mother disappears the way Nancy did, it almost guaranteed that someone in the family is asking, what did or do or not? What did I do or not do? That's what it is. The I is a type. So let me read that again. When a mother disappears the way Nancy did, it almost guaranteed that someone in the family is asking, what did I do or not do? In this case, we know there were family routines, who drove her, who checked in, who helped her manage living alone. It would be surprising if behind the scenes, those details weren't being replayed over and over. The stress of the moment fused to the anxiety of not knowing where she is can make people obsess about every decision. Who dropped her off that night, whether another camera should have been installed, whether she should have moved in with one of the kids sooner. Sometimes that turns outwards into blame, because blaming someone else can temporarily relieve your own guilt. If you hadn't, she would be safe. At other times, it goes inward, with someone quietly carrying all the blame for choices they made in good faith. Either extreme, constant finger pointing or crushing self-blame, can damage the very relationships they need to lean on right now. A healthier balance is all of them acknowledging the emotion without getting stuck in whose fault is this, and instead putting their energy into what they can do together today to help bring Nancy home. So in a case like Nancy Guthrie, how common is it for family members to obsess over every choice they made and either shift blame onto each other or internalize all the guilt? And what does a healthier balance look like so they can still function and support the search?
Yeah, it's very common when something like this happens for all of these past fears and traumas. Even their childhood trauma can even come out. But it's pretty, believe it or not, because I used to be a critical care nurse, it's pretty normal for them to start fighting and blaming and, well, you never did this and you never did enough for mom and so forth. So a lot of ugliness can come out, but it sounds like for them, at least they were able to get themselves together and come up as a united front with, how do we need to get mom back and what do we need to do? But I imagine there have been some times where they've had a lot of, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda, because, you know, it's always very clear when something has happened, what you should have done. But in this case, really, I don't know that it was avoidable.
Yeah, and I want to mention something. So as I've been covering this true crime, sometimes I with the Sebastian Rogers case, I saw two parents blaming each other, and it did not benefit the missing child at all.
No.
You know, when you have the people that should be working together spending most of their time blaming each other of who's right or wrong. Well, when you're doing that, there's no resolution there. It's just who's right or who's wrong. And that's a lot to say. Like, I'm not willing to admit I'm wrong, because if I admit I'm wrong, then I'm responsible for the So at that point, it's not even about right or wrong coming at the table. It's about resolving. What can I do to play my role? What can you do to play your role? And working together. And I will tell you, I see Savannah in the center because I believe she is kind of the anchor to some extent. And this is not to lessen everyone else. It's not to lessen Cameron or Annie, but the way it's been positioned is that she may be the anchor here. Maybe that anchor comes from being, maybe she's the strongest one. I don't know the family well enough to know that. Or maybe there's some level of accountability in what she feels could be her reach, you know, her fame. And at that point here, I'm going to take ownership of that, even if it may not be true or not, but maybe it could be. So I'm going to take ownership of that and sit in the middle of this and do what I can, and then have everybody here to support whatever direction we must head in. Does that make sense to some level?
Yeah, she's making, she's using her influence and her connection with the public to her advantage, and rightfully so. And
the peers, I think, would see the benefits of that. Her siblings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll tell you something. You could see in the videos like a strength there, even amongst us, where they're all together. She, to me, right front and center is who you notice first. She's the standout figure. But if you take a time to look to the left and right, you also see, obviously, I think they're her support as well.
I'm sure they are.
So I got in the Guthrie case, you could almost hear the what if I had voices that might be playing in people's heads. What if we hadn't let her live alone? What if we pushed harder about security? What if someone had gone back one more time that night? Some degree of that is normal. It's the mind trying to make sense of something senseless. But a simple rule applies here. If the guilt keeps you from moving forward, it isn't healthy. If someone in the family becomes so consumed by replaying one decision that they can't sleep, can't eat, or can't engage with investigators, that guilt stops being useful and starts becoming a trap. Looking backwards only helps if it's done in a way that supports moving forward, learning, adjusting, supporting each other, and the investigation. There's also a danger, especially in a high-profile case, that people will take responsibility for things that were never actually in their control, turning themselves into the villain of the story instead of placing accountability where it belongs, on the person who came to Nancy's home and took her. When guilt is misdirected like that, it becomes almost impossible to deal with the real external problem because all the emotional energy is tied up in self-punishment. Now,
it's true.
From your perspective, when you look at families in a situation like the Guthries, how do you distinguish between guilt that can be processed in a healthy way versus the kind of destructive guilt that freezes people and keeps them from engaging with what really needs their attention?
Yeah. Well, again, when we feel guilty, it's because we've done something wrong. In this case, they didn't do anything intentionally wrong. They dropped mom off at her house, and probably like they had done many, many times. And this was just a tragic event that happened. This was a trauma. But what happens a lot of times when we experience trauma is we pull all the energy of that to ourselves and we make it about us. Oh, if only I had done this, and me, and so forth. And the energy goes in the wrong direction because then all the focus becomes on you and not on the problem. But it takes a lot of strength to sort of hold it and then push it out and say, okay, what can we do as a family? What can we do partnering with law enforcement? How can we get to some sort of resolution, knowing that, this is just a really tough situation, and, regardless of the outcome, it needs to be handled, and there was just no way to avoid it.
Yeah, and it's great that you say that, because I've noticed, and I've seen this in the cases that we cover, is that, when you don't know what's happening and you're stuck in this ambiguity, blame is big. Either you blame someone else or you blame yourself. And then what happens here is, in the end, where your energy should be isn't.
Exactly.
Well, it's in agreement with what you say, so I'm just borrowing from your words technically, but it's true. Like, I've seen it where, people get so caught up in guilt or blame that they don't focus on who's really accountable. You know where I see that a lot as, not that it connects here, but in female rape victims. they may take on some level of shame or guilt as if they deserve what happened. And then when when law enforcement tries to talk to them, they don't want to do it because they don't want the attention. Maybe they're just so ashamed by what happened that they don't want to hold that right party accountable. That's why I always tell people that, what you're feeling is normal. I get it because one is, I think usually for most people, they may want to blame external first or blame outwards first, because in that mind, it frees them of the guilt of something that they're not willing to accept, especially accept that they're responsible for. And then if that's not handled correctly, when that option becomes exhausted, then all that energy goes inwards and then they destroy themselves in the process. But somewhere in the middle is where they need to be.
Yes. And hopefully if they can testify or they can put a stop to it, they'll prevent other people from going through the same thing, which is what I try to tell them. But it's tough because they're so full of shame and guilt and remorse and I should have never done or whatever, that they have trouble putting the energy, getting it to go the other way.
Yeah, like whoever dropped her off, for example, could have said, should I walk her to the house? Maybe I should check inside her house before I left. You're going to have all these impossible what ifs that weren't part of your routine.
Correct.
Correct. And the funny thing is you don't put the weight on that because the knowledge you now have minimizes all that. And it makes it look like, well, you should have known. And it's like, no, but I'll guarantee, that could play out multiple ways. The person dropping off could say, man, I should have walked in the house. 84-year-old woman. Why didn't I walk her to the door? I mean, now I'm doing that with my mom. Every time I drop her off, I'm walking her to the door. And that's because of this case. It was, most of the time my mom's like, I could walk myself. I could do this myself, but you know what? This wasn't so much about her getting to the door, but check out the home. That may not have been on your mind at that point. It's a nice upscale neighborhood. Walking her to the door, if she says she's okay, physically she can do it. But your mindset probably didn't have a reason to think, hey, somebody could be in her home or someone could be scouting her home. Yeah.
And if you're elderly, you want the independence. Like the last thing you want to do is have your adult kid walk into the door. Yep. Because that's something they just don't want to give up. And she lived by herself. I mean, why would she want somebody to walk her to the door and walk her in the house?
Yeah, and I think, before they even got on camera for that first time, all these things had to be played out, in their head, because, a lot of people are going to handle this differently, external blame, internal guilt, whatever it is. But when they go on camera, they all have to be on the same page of where that accountability is. And if this is a kidnapping or ransom case, it's here, not here or here.
Right. What's the plan? What are we going to say? What's our voices going to, what's the message we're going to try to convey? And what direction are we headed?
Yes. So in the Guthrie case, by the time we're having this conversation, that second, far more consequential deadline the kidnappers have set will be almost past about half an hour. The rest of us only know the headline, 6 million in Bitcoin, a Monday 5 p.m. cutoff, which, by the way, there was no money put in Bitcoin per TMZ. They checked the wallet. But only the family and investigators really know what those missed deadlines mean behind the scenes and how seriously to take the threat. That's important to me. We don't know what the ransom says. We don't know what the consequences are for the missed deadline. They do. Mm-hmm. So that matters because there's the pressure of the deadline and the consequence if it's not met. So assuming this is a true kidnapping, the pressure doesn't just come from the dollar amount. It comes from the feeling that you failed to beat the clock. That can ramp up urgency to a level where people feel almost shoved into decisions they're not comfortable with. The person or people making the demand suddenly feel like they have all the power and the family can feel like they have none. Inside the pressure cooker, you can easily get a split. Some family members may want to react impulsively, send money, make public promises, say yes to anything because that's exactly what the kidnapper's deadline is designed to trigger. Others will want to be more strategic and cautious, staying in step with the FBI and the sheriff's department, who may be telling them to slow down, think this through, and not give the kidnapper everything they're asking for on their terms. That tension between urgency and strategy can create confusion and even friction between the family and law enforcement at the worst possible time. So from your perspective, what does it do to a family mentally when there's a literal countdown clock attached to their loved one's life? How does that kind of deadline affect decision making impulse control, and even the relationship between a family like the Guthries and the investigators who are asking them to think before they act.
Yeah, and what to believe and what not to believe. And because I was reading today, with AI too, like they're not even sure, like how you prove that they actually have her. And because with AI generated, a lot of times they can come up with the right answers with simple questions. So it's there's just so much involved here. I honestly, I don't know what I would do if I were the one of the children. It's like, do you give them the money and then then what? Like, how do you get her back? And is she going to be in good health? Or it's just awful.
Well, you're right. So I think because it's you're powerless.
Right? Exactly. You're powerless.
Right. So here's what I think. So you're given a situation right now where all the cards are on one side. They're holding something with tremendous value to you, and your emotions are totally going to be connected to whatever that deadline and consequence is. And they know that you playing into that, and they're hoping that you act impulsively. That's why earlier I had mentioned that you may not be in control, but you may not be in control of the situation, but you have to be in control of yourself. One thing I learned when I was, when I do the leadership stuff is that the only thing that you can really control is your own effort and attitude. As much as, this not minimizing the situation, but a boss that makes the job miserable. Okay, well, at the end of the day, how I choose to react to him is a choice on me, not on him. So same thing here. It's how do you balance the want to do as said because there's a what if chance, or be strategic with it and slow your roll because you really don't know what you're actually making the decision to do just yet. You don't know because, what does this open up the door for? But I do know when it comes to this, it's beyond the money. This has really nothing to do with the money. It doesn't, because at the end of the day is if I'm going to pay it, okay, I'll pay it. But once I pay it, what does that mean? Does it mean that now I become a target for another ransom? Right. There's so much that's said once you pay it. That's why they have to hold weight. They can't make it that easy. But now the fact that there's been no two-way dialogue, I don't know if this is a real case. That's what makes me think, like, I don't know. But if this is a real case, it's extremely strategic from the kidnapper side, because I'm not going to get caught in no negotiation. This is what it is. We already, whatever the first deadline was passed, this was the result of it. Now you got the second one. And that actually, the result of the first one, if there was something that happened, we don't know yet, it's going to put urgency on this final one.
Yep. And then if you pay it, then you're going to have a lot of cases like this now.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right. It just doesn't stop. So
it's not going to stop.
What's it set the precedence for? So the hardest part here is you would have someone that would want the instant solution, but it's not going to solve it in the long run. Because I can see myself doing that way. Well, I'd rather give it and roll the dice than not give it. And this is what happens. Well, hold on. Because the long term of this is you're going to leave yourself target again, because once they realize you have it, they'll come for you again. It never really, it's never going to be one payoff and be done with it. So, and this is tough too, because this is where law enforcement comes in. The feds are experts at this. And this is where they're going to try to make it strategic, try to put measures in play that if you do make payment, they can track where the payment is, but it takes time. And they're going to want to test the boundaries a little bit. And I don't mean that in any way where they want to put your loved one at risk, but they need to know, who are we dealing with? Yeah. Without me knowing who we're dealing with, I don't feel comfortable giving anything. So first thing first, let's get proof of life. Show me you have that person. And then that kind of gives you a little insight of who you may be dealing with. And then now, if there's anything going in play, you have some idea of who's on the other end and how to work them. That's why you even have like these behavior analysis units that they go by basically. Criminal Minds is a great show, but it's not as realistic as People like to think, because they seem to solve everything in 45 minutes, and most of their guesses tend to be right. It doesn't work like that. I mean, obviously, they lean on what's statistical. A majority of it goes this way. We'll try this way. This is the scripts that usually work. We'll go this way. What makes this a bit difficult is this. If this is a true kidnapping, whatever, it's not going by any script that anybody's aware of.
No.
So now you pool the number one resource that the feds can provide is familiarity in dealing with these things. But now when it breaks from the script and there is no contact, there's no proof of life, the decision-making gets to be pretty hard. At least that's what we're told. There was no proof of life and there's no contact. We don't know. We don't know everything, but let's say that's the case. It's not normal. It's not routine. Now they have to think way outside the box. And this is where you may see the family, law enforcement, even with each other, just kind of be stuck in a confusion that can cause conflict, because you're dealing with serious ambiguity. Like if I'm trusting the feds with my loved one's life, I'm going to be, the first thing I'm going to want to know, are they familiar with this? I assume they are, but now they're familiar with the generalized kidnapping, ransom. I for the most part, way better than I'll ever be, let's just say. But now, before I make decisions, I'm going to keep on trying to look for reassurance, saying, hey, now you sure you've done this before in the past? You sure this worked in the past, whatever it is? And they may come out and say, well, most of the time it does. Obviously nothing's perfect. But then when they come out and say, hey, we never dealt with someone that never showed us proof of life, or we never dealt with someone that wasn't willing to contact us, now we're in a state of ambiguity where I can't get the reassurance I need. And ultimately it's my loved one. And then the law enforcement, for them, it's a tough decision too, because I'm going to give you advice, but if there's an end result here that doesn't work in the way we expect, because we haven't been on this ground before, well, that's on us now.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And the funny thing about all this, Denise, is no matter what you try, the outcome is on them. It's not on, there's nothing that you can do that can give you control of what they're going to decide to do with Nancy.
That's true.
Now, how do you accept that?
Yeah. And in a way, it's almost like a no-win. It's just, there's so many unknowns, and this is uncharted territory. And so I wouldn't say it's a crapshoot, but in a way it is.
Yeah. And the sad thing is how do you accept that and make a choice and accept the choice? So that and we'll get to that, but that's the key thing here. I think somewhere along the line, as you go through it, and now this becomes the routine day. I mean, and let's be honest, they're 9 days in. This is their day for the last this is what their day has been for the last 9 days. So now obviously the urgency is still going to be there, but sadly, you get someone who's scared at first, who's willing to do everything. Now you get someone who's there who's just frustrated because it's 9 days. Because I could see, being scared at first, shocked, whatever it is. But then as it moves forward, I'm assuming those feelings, because of the routine of it all, could transition into frustration.
Yep. And feeling so helpless and hopeless, like it's never going to get. I mean, I imagine they're at their wits' end, and they're like, enough already. We need this taken care of.
Right, and sometimes there's a good thing about that too, because I'm thinking here, not that you're going to act impulsively, but that frustration may be the first sign. As long as you're not doing it as an impulsive reaction, and maybe the first sign that maybe there's a way to start logically thinking about the choices that you have to make, and then accepting the outcome of those choices, because that's the scary part. It's not so much making the choice, but committing to an outcome that's out of your control.
Yeah. And likely with her at her age, whatever happens, she's not going to do well. I mean, she's
that's
already
the scary part.
And
you have to realize it wasn't your choice that caused it. It was their actions that did.
It's true. And no matter what you did your best. It's likely going to really, be tough.
Yeah, what are you going to? I mean, the funny thing I've realized is if you don't make a choice, the problems become more complex because you're working in something that's fluid. So when you're working in something that's fluid, and I've seen this in corrections, if you don't step up and you wait to make the perfect decision, which never happens, the problems grow in complexity. When you're dealing with real time, it's not difficult problems, it's complex problems because they layer. So sometimes, and by the way, you're not just throwing out a decision blindly. You're leaning on some level of experience and expertise, and in this case here, that's where you're leaning on law enforcement for. But you got to throw a decision into the chaos to slow shit down.
Yeah. You got to get it to go in one direction or another. You have to make some sort of choice.
Now, in the case like Nancy Guthrie, this may be the hardest question a family ever has to face is, do we pay or not? On paper, payment is the one piece of this nightmare that feels like it's under their control, but the kidnappers know that, and that's exactly why they attach a hard deadline and a threat if it isn't met. The truth is the decision can't be driven purely by emotion, even though everything about the situation is emotional. Deadlines and consequences are designed to force emotional decision-making to make the family feel they have no choice but to comply quickly. At the same time, law enforcement is trying to pull them back towards logic and strategy, and that's a tough balance. If these kidnappers don't behave like the usual script, even well-intentioned guidance from the feds or the sheriff could backfire. There's also a brutal unknown. You don't really know who you're dealing with on the other end. Outside of 100% compliance, any deviation, even something small, can feel like a risk. And yet, full compliance is its own risk, with no guarantee of a safe return. In the end, whatever choice the Guthries make, they have to be able to tell themselves, given what we knew in that moment, this was the right call, because they can't control how the kidnapper will react. In this case, if the kidnapping is real, it doesn't even look like there's a true avenue for back and forth negotiation. The first family message tried to open that door, and the second message suggested they've been told just how serious the kidnappers are. So there is an effort to acknowledge the kidnappers' control, but it can never be 100%. When a family like the Guthries is weighing whether to pay or not pay, knowing that either choice could be used against them by the kidnapper, by the public, or even in their own minds later, how do you help them approach that decision in a way that is as rational and grounded as possible, rather than purely emotional? I think we kind of touched on that. But.
Well, and if I were their therapist or somebody that was brought in to help them, I would really encourage them to lean into and sort of follow law enforcement, because I feel like they have more experience and I feel like they can make better decisions, or at least more objective decisions. And I would encourage them to really sort of follow the advice of law enforcement. This is not something you want to take on. I wouldn't want to take it on my own. I mean, going up against a kidnapper that wants $6 million, and I would feel like I was getting to uncharted territory, and I would think that it would be a danger to me, to my family, and not only to, obviously, to my mother in this situation.
Yeah. And by the way, the want for compliance makes sense, because for those that feel powerless, they have the ultimate control. Give them what they want and they'll give me this. Okay. There's a lot of trust there.
Yeah. That doesn't always work.
Yeah. That's the roll of the dice, is on the trust. That's why the people in law enforcement's like, I can't trust that 100%. So I need to get little inches of control here, because that's what they're trying to establish. Yes. Like if I roll the dice right now on impulse, that's literally 100% I'm giving to people I know nothing about. Don't even know if they have my mom, if that's the case, where the government or the feds are going to try to say, hey, listen, we can't roll the dice on that, because you're rolling the dice on them. And I'm not willing to bet my money on them. I need you to bet money on us here. So we have to find a way to shift and give us some control. It can't be 100%, but can we at least get 5%? And you have to convince the family of where that 5% can come in. It could be just the scariest thing. Don't pay right away.
Yeah.
Demand from them, something in return, so we have something back, because if not, there's no guarantee either way, but if not, we have no level of control, nothing that we can bring to the table.
Right. We have no leverage.
No leverage.
You give them what they want. You have no leverage.
And it's the scariest thing, because the people that do the kidnapping, if this is the case, but just in general, the leverage is the money that the family can pay. And that's what they try to get them to make the decision on quick and drastic, by using the consequences and the deadline to minimize that leverage, or put that leverage in their control.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
the feds are going to say, like you said, no, hold on that. That's our only leverage we got is the fact that they want the money. They didn't do all this and not hope to get paid.
Right, exactly.
In a situation like the Guthrie case, payment becomes this tragic paradox. It feels like the one thing you can control, but the price of exercising that control may be enormous. The kidnappers understand that perfectly, which is why they anchor everything to a deadline and a consequence. Miss the cutoff and something terrible happens. That's exactly why the decision cannot be driven purely by emotion, even though emotion is the loudest voice in the room. The deadline is there to manufacture panic and emotional decision-making while investigators are trying to pull the family back towards logic, patterns, and probabilities. But if the kidnappers don't allow the usual script or typical negotiation behavior, even law enforcement efforts to restore some sense of order can backfire, and suddenly everyone feels like any move can make things worse. On top of that, you really don't know who is on the other end of the demand. Short of 100% compliance, any adjustment or hesitation can feel like a gamble, but full compliance has no guarantee either. Even paying a ransom does not ensure a safe return or a clean path to catching whoever is responsible. So in the end, families like the Guthries have to reach a point where they can say, given what we knew at that time and the guidance we had, this was the right decision for us because they cannot control how the kidnappers respond. And in this case, if it is a real kidnapping, there doesn't even seem to be a clear channel for genuine negotiation. After the first note and the family's reply, their second public message that we understand suggests they may have received a hardline response that left very little room to maneuver. So when you're advising a family in a case like this, where payment is both their only apparent lever and also a huge risk, how do you help them find a sense of grounded control in a situation where there may be no truly safe option? We kind of touched on this.
Well, I was going to say, and there's no guarantee or safe option, but what I would do is I would want law enforcement backing behind me to make sure that we're doing this as safely and objectively as possible. And I wouldn't want to do it on my own. And I also wouldn't feel comfortable with it.
You want to hear something funny? As I was doing my research for this, one of the things I read was that, I don't know if I would go this far, but there was someone that was on, I don't know if he was FBI or something, but they were talking about having hope to the point, realistic hope. That's key, realistic hope. But some point, the better decision making may come where they play on your love for your loved one. So sometimes there could be a point where you may have to accept the fact that they're already gone to gain that control. Mm-hmm. I think there was a movie, Ransom, back in the day, where Mel Gibson, where he just stops taking the calls, starts hanging up. And I think that's played out somewhere in real life. And I'd be good if anybody knows about this, because it's not mentioned in a lot. But there's at one point where some of the decisions that are less emotional may come from when the people in law enforcement may say, hey, listen, you could be negotiating, but there's no proof of life here. So you may have to accept the fact that you may give them money, but your mom's already gone. And sometimes when they embrace that, not that they accept does not mean agree. I wrote books like accept does not mean agree. So don't think I want to separate that. Accept means that's going to help me move forward with maybe a better decision. So now if I accept the fact that my mother's already gone, which is very hard for me to do, because that could be the case, then maybe I become less vulnerable.
Yeah, and you can be more objective.
Yeah. Now would that be hard for people to do? Is that good advice?
It is hard. I mean, it's a tough place to go to be. To sort of step away from it and come in logically when it's something that's very emotionally charged.
Would you be able to take that advice?
I think if I were in this situation, I would really lean into law enforcement. It's the same as when you're really sick and you have to put your full of trust into a doctor to sort of take over and make decisions. I mean, I think it's the same thing. It's not really knowing what to do, but going to somebody who has more experience and understands the situation more clearly. For me, that would be what I would do.
And I like that, because if you could give advice here, if you're going to roll the dice into experience, not inexperience. I've never been through this before. I'm not going to bet on my thing, but if you're confident, and then sadly, if the decision doesn't go your way, I think the best option would have been with the experience anyway.
Yes. And, and I felt comfortable in my decision to put it in somebody's hands they were more seasoned.
And you have to live with the power. So for that, you have to have faith in your choice over the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the outcome was never in your control to begin with. So whatever the choice could have been, you could have done the other way and it not help. Even though they'll make it look like, you should have did this. There's never a guarantee. So you have to roll your dice into where you feel you can trust more. And I'm not going to give them that dice. I'm going to give it to the people in my circle.
Mm-hmm.
So as this case has unfolded, we've seen both public appeals from the Guthries and firm messaging from law enforcement and the FBI. Officials have talked about treating every ransom type note seriously, demanding proof of life, and warning that fake ransom demands will be prosecuted, which they did. They're going after somebody now. They gave him a $20,000 bond, but he is being charged. While also stressing that any decision about payment ultimately belongs to the family. That can create a very real tension. On one side, you have a family whose instinct is, we'll do anything, we will pay anything, just bring her home. On the other, you have investigators who've seen these situations go very wrong and who may be urging patience, verification, and strategy instead of immediate reaction. It's amazing how we're answering these questions. It's going right into the next question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
How do you explain that tension to families, especially in a case like the Guthries, where every move is under a microscope? And what does it look like in real time when a family's emotional instinct and investigators' strategic advice don't line up? We kind of answered it, but what do you got?
Yeah.
Anything else?
The only thing I would add to that is what I would try to help the family understand is just because you're not paying the money doesn't mean that you don't love your mother or that you don't want your mother back. I mean, we have to sort of separate that, because what we do is we go, well, if I don't pay, then that tells the public, that tells everybody that we don't care about her and that the money means more than she does. And that's not the case. This is trying to take care of the situation and make sure that these kidnappers, that this doesn't start a precedence where this is what people start to do now, is start abducting people and demanding money. And this becomes something that's becoming more normal. This is not what you want to do.
You made a very good point there about, because there will be some people, just pay the money, get her back. It's not about the money.
Right. And it's not that you don't love your mother and that you're not willing to do that, because obviously we're willing to do whatever we have to for each other. But this is whether it's reasonable or prudent or not. And in this case, it would, I don't know that it would solve anything.
Right. I did a video, guys. You guys can get a chance, check it out. To my playlist about how payments are made. And they talked about, what about families that, let's say there is a ransom, but they can't afford it. And sometimes what happens is families will do whatever they can to bring their loved one back, would put the house up and all this other stuff. And law enforcement may say, be careful what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You could do all this and not have the loved one there,
Right. It's like any other scam, that you get taken for money.
It's like an impossible. So we got 6 more questions, I think. In many classic kidnapping cases, there's a grim kind of back and forth calls. There's a grim kind of back and forth. So you got calls, texts, follow-up demands, proof of life exchanges. Here, from what's been made public, we see something different. A ransom email sent to media, deadline spelled out in writing, and then family videos that seem designed to answer those demands and invite further contact. But investigators have also said that after those deadlines were publicized, there's been no clear update from the person or people behind the ransom note, and at least one imposter ransom has already been exposed and charged. That means the Guthries may be doing what negotiators usually advise, trying to keep the line of communication open without any guarantee that someone is really on the other end. So in a situation where the kidnapper isn't really engaging in dialogue, what tools, if any, does a family or a negotiator still have? Is there still a way to influence the outcome when you're mostly talking into the dark, as the Guthries might be now? That's what makes this situation, if this is a real kidnapping. Mm-hmm. I don't got a chance to communicate and get an understanding of what's on the other side. And I think that if this is the case and it is a kidnapping, this is why there's no script here.
Mm-hmm.
What would you? Yeah.
Well, I also wonder, and maybe I'm the first one to wonder. I'm wondering, like, is all this kidnapping some sort of connected to Savannah and the fact that she's somewhat of I wouldn't say a public figure, but that she's a media presence?
We don't know that, but it could be. But we don't know. That's never been
released. But you wonder, like, what's the motive? I mean, like, I mean, if I take your mother and ask for $6 million, it's like not likely that many people are going to have that kind of money. And, why her?
It's funny because when I saw her video, the most recent plea, and now it's this close to the deadline. I mean, could she be telling everybody to call law enforcement because she could be told from the other side to do that so they could be distracted and then secure the funding or whatever it is. But I obviously that, it's thoughts that go through your head that I just couldn't roll my dice on. I mean, likelihood, yeah, probability. I'm going to try to lean on. There's a million likelihoods that go on in this freaking head of mine, but the probability is what you want to lean on. Now, this, as I said, for this question here, if I really think on it, in a situation where the kidnapper isn't really engaging in a dialogue, what tools, if any, does a family or negotiator still have? Is there still a way to influence the outcome when you're mostly talking into the dark, as the Guthries may be right now? So the scary thing is this: if they're not willing, this is going to sound crazy. I can't get control if I'm not allowed an interaction, right? So if they put the 2 deadlines in and it's definitive and they don't want to contact back, this is where the decision's tough. But I'm again, I don't know, because I'm not in the situation, but I would like to think that I wouldn't give them anything, because there's nothing I'm getting back in return. If I provide something, as I mentioned, there has to be an ounce, there has to be even an ounce. I have to have something come back my way, especially if it's a full amount. Now you figure if they don't want to communicate with me, then the only way I can have some ounce of control is to not respond back and then hope that they will. But that is such a scary thing because they have your loved one.
It is.
But now if I assume that at this point my loved one has already passed, then maybe that decision is not as hard for me to do.
Yeah. It's so hard to say without personally being in the situation. I mean, it's sometimes easy to look at it, from here and go, oh, I would probably do that. I mean, the only thing I'm pretty positive that I would do is lean into law enforcement to take the lead. That's the only thing I would feel the most comfortable with. I know I couldn't handle it.
Do you know why I would do that too? Scary thing about it all is if I went rogue, I wouldn't be able to live with that decision. I would need someone to blame. As scary as that sounds, I'm being honest with you. I would defer. So if there is a bad choice,
Plus, if you take it into your own hands and it doesn't go well, people are like, I don't know why they didn't, they had the FBI handling it and helping them, and why they felt like they should handle it on their own. Plus, I think you really put yourself in a dangerous situation handling it on your own.
Yeah. And the good thing is, even though the FBI is behind the scene, they're not in the forefront. It still looks like you're dealing directly with the family. It's not like even in the videos, you're not seeing the Fed standing there. You're not seeing law enforcement. You're seeing just the family and whoever's on the other side. Mm-hmm. So in just a few days, the Guthrie's family public message has evolved from an emotional plea for Nancy's safe return to a direct call for proof of life to a clear and unconditional "we will pay" statement that experts say was crafted to lower every barrier to getting her back. And then we have the most recent video, by the way, which is plead for help, which may be more for a public, not directly at a kidnapper. That's why I'm thinking maybe there's a shift here. Those videos aren't just about talking to the public. They're also a way of talking to whoever may have Nancy. At least the first 2 videos were, not the third. That's a delicate balance. A message that is too emotional might comfort the family supporters, but not move the kidnapper. A message that is too cold or legalistic might miss the chance to humanize Nancy and appeal to any sense of self-interest or conscience on the other side. And the Guthries have tried to walk that line, showing love for Nancy, offering payment, and signaling they are not seeking revenge. Now, from your vantage point, how can a family like the Guthries use public statements as a real negotiation tool rather than just an emotional outlet? What are the key elements you listen for in a message like "we will pay" that tell you whether it's likely to help or possibly backfire?
Well, and it's hard to say what they're being prompted on by law enforcement to say, whether it's like, just tell them that, you're willing to pay whether we are or not. I mean, I imagine, there's a lot of strategy behind the Guthries, and I imagine they're getting a lot of support, and I cannot think that they're doing anything that they're not being prompted to to sort of follow a script.
Supposedly there was a new statement made. Let me see. Brian Etman said a sheriff just dropped a new statement.
All right, so there's a new statement from the Pima County Sheriff's Office. I'm going to read it to you. It says, "We do not have any additional information to release publicly this afternoon. The investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance remains active and ongoing. We understand the significant public interest in this case. However, investigators need time and space to do their work. If and when relevant information becomes available, it will be shared." They say there's going to be no press briefing scheduled right now unless something happens. And then
everybody expected the press conference because of the deadline. The deadline is pretty much here.
They say many of you observed an active law enforcement presence at the Guthrie residence over the weekend. Yes, we did. That activity will continue tonight and into tomorrow as part of the ongoing investigative process, including the expansion of the search and follow-up on new leads. So that's interesting there. I don't know if we're going to see them coming back out here. This is all part of the investigative process as the search for Nancy expands and new leads come in. To preserve the integrity of this criminal investigation, details of that process are not being released at this time. It's interesting that they say new leads are coming in. So that's kind of the latest on Southside Nancy.
So the new leads could be anything from the kidnapping to she wasn't, and now we believe that there could have been someone in the home. Let's get back to where we were. For the one question I just asked for the vantage point, the public statements, real negotiation tool rather than just an emotional outlet. What are the key elements you listen for in a message like "we will pay"? I just my thought is, to be honest with you, the people that do this just care about the action. You are, of course, going to try to humanize your mom. Hopefully, you could play into one of them. If there's multiple people involved, usually there's someone that's the lead, someone that will do anything, and then there's someone that usually has the softer side that's just kind of like the come along. And hopefully your message reaches out to them. Or one thing, if it's a good message and they let her hear it, then the message could give her hope and keep her alive while we try to figure out what's going on. Again, if this is a kidnapping. So the message, it still serves a purpose, but at the end of the day, all they want to know is if they've been paid or not, but that doesn't guarantee she's coming back to you. Because of who Savannah is, this case hasn't just been covered. It's been analyzed, debated, and picked apart in real time by commentators, social media, and even would-be armchair profilers. That's not us, believe it or not. We have psych backgrounds and have actually done real profiling. You learn a lot when you spend, almost going to be 24 years in prisons and jails. We already seen at least one person charged in connection with an imposter ransom demand that tried to exploit the chaos. That raises a hard question. When a kidnapping with ransom threat becomes a national storyline, the attention can help generate tips and pressure, but it can also invite copycats, hoaxes, and people who want to insert themselves into the narrative. Every false lead drains time and energy away from the real search for Nancy. So, Denise, in cases like this where the media spotlight is so intense, how do investigators and families manage the downside? Copycats, fake ransom notes, online speculation, while still using the public's attention as a force multiplier to help bring someone like Nancy home.
Yeah, and I think that the video that we saw with Savannah was just very raw and very, it was very sensitive and it was very sincere. And I think that that's all that they can do.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would add is this, and I agree with you. So law enforcement tends to go to the media when they really are at a loss, or when they are trying to figure out more, but they make it look like they're at a loss. Because again, they don't want to give out every game plan. So sometimes they can admit that, or they may go on media that we don't know what's going on when they really do, but they're trying to find leads. So I think when they go to the media, they don't really go with a blank template. They go with where they think the direction is headed, even though it may appear it's a blank template.
With some sort of motive, whether we know what it is or not.
Yeah, because of course they got to act on every tip that comes their way, but they're not going so blindly that they're going into the unknown because pressure is leading them. No, they kind of know when they go out there what they're expecting. So even though it may come out ambiguous, they know the question that they're really asking, and they know what to target and what not to target. So I think that's good to know. Like remember, they got access to a lot more than we'll ever do. So when we put something out there, we really don't know. But they're on the crime scene. They'll know the cases better than we ever will. So when they go out there, they may say we don't know nothing. One is protecting the investigation. Two is they what I believe is they know something.
Mhm.
They're not just going there blindly. And if they did, that is really a cold case.
Yeah.
You know, before they go to the media, I know for a fact, one, all options have been exhausted. But sometimes when they go to the outsource like this, whatever they're doing, it's more for direction into a route that they kind of figured is going that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's never, you know, what's funny? It's kind of like it may be seen as vulnerability to some level, but it shouldn't be taken as vulnerability like they don't know what they're doing, but rather vulnerability. We need help in this one area here.
Right. It's an approach that they're using, and they're using the media or the public to help with it.
Let's be honest, it's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a tool that you use with experience.
Yeah.
Let's put that in there. It's not, you know, I don't just pick up a hammer and not know what to do with it.
Yeah. It's not random.
Yeah. They don't just go to the media and not plan. No, it's being used as a tool. The media is being used. And the funny thing is, when the media is not used as a tool, then it works against us.
Mm-hmm.
3 more questions. So right now, everything around the Guthrie case feels urgent. Deadlines, breaking news, banners, live updates from outside the neighborhood where Nancy vanished. But if this turns into a long haul case with no quick resolution, the psychology for the family shifts from crisis response into something more like chronic trauma, which we kind of touched on before.
Yeah.
Sleep gets worse, relationships strain under the weight of unanswered questions. Every new possible lead can swing them from hope to despair in a matter of hours. And because this is so public, the Guthries will also be processing that pain in front of an audience that expects them to be composed, articulate, and available. If a case like Nancy drags on, what does it take for the family like the Guthries to survive the long haul emotionally? What kinds of support, boundaries, or coping strategies become essential when you're living in limbo for weeks or months or years?
Yeah, and it'll be tough, particularly if they don't get any closure. So if they never find out like what happened to her and so forth, that's even going to be harder to recover from, because then there's always hope, you know, that maybe she's still alive. You know, the likelihood is not, but it's going to be quite a journey for them.
When we cover these other cases, I keep on thinking of Sebastian Rogers. You also got Elizabeth Green. These are individuals that have gone missing that they haven't been able to find. I did this story. Thomas Medlin, the little boy that may have disappeared, going after someone from Roblox, or he could have jumped into the Manhattan, off the Manhattan Bridge or whatever, the Brooklyn Bridge or whatever it was. I think the problem here is, how do you accept the fact when you don't know what's happened to them, you don't have a closure, like you said. How do you move on without feeling guilty?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I saw recently the Sebastian Rogers case, and people are going after the mother because she went shopping. Now, granted, everybody can have their interpretation of mother. I'm not here to have that debate. But just in the context of what we're saying here, okay, so she went shopping. Mm-hmm. It's been a couple of years. Now, granted, there's some people, I get it, that believe she could have some involvement, but just take it within the context of what I'm saying. She went shopping. She started to move forward. And I think that's extremely hard when you don't have that closure. That's why a lot of people say, you know, at this point here, I'd rather just tell me she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just can't move forward knowing that she could still be out there and saved.
Yeah. And a lot of times people will have a funeral, even though they never do find the remains, just so that they can try to get some sort of emotional closure. And
then move forward themselves.
They try to, yeah.
You know, I think for this question here, it's tough, because that's something you don't recover from, is knowing that person could still be out there, and you know, your loved one could still be out there. And I wouldn't recover from that. If I lost any one of the people in my house, I'm up every day. That will be my routine.
Yeah, that
every would be day until I die.
First thing you think of in the morning.
Yeah, and I don't know if they would want that, but it just be who we are, because this was the life you planned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't have any other backup here. So when you take that, then my objective is to go back and do what I can to find my loved one. And literally, I know me. I wouldn't be so cared about my well-being. There's nothing you could do with that. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to find that out. And then if I die in the effort to do that, then that's, I just wouldn't, horrible. That's just absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
Last two questions. So investigators have said they don't yet have a named suspect in Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, but they are treating it as a likely kidnapping. That was, again, when I put the script together. I don't know if that's changed. He said he's gotten some new leads, but they're treating it as likely kidnapping and looking closely at everything from ransom emails to who had access to her home and routine. And we formulated the show based on that context. For families, that phase of the investigation can be especially corrosive because it forces them to think about the unthinkable, that someone they know or someone close to the circle might be involved. At the same time, they may be asking to open up at the same time, they're being asked to open up their lives, phones, finances, histories to investigators, which can feel like being under a microscope while they're already in pain. In a high-profile case, even innocent friends or relatives can start to feel like they're being tried in court or public opinion. And by the way, as I mentioned, Annie and Tommaso and Nancy's home, they're being searched, but they're Tommaso and Annie have agreed to the search in the house. So how do you help a family like the Guthries navigate that phase where everyone and everything has to be examined without completely destroying trust inside the inner circle? What does a healthy cooperation with investigators look like emotionally when the net has to be cast so wide or so narrow?
And I imagine initially they're willing and so forth, and after a while it just gets so overwhelming. I mean, it's got to be. You have people go through your stuff and asking you question after question, looking into your finances, and I mean, it just adds more trauma onto already a traumatic situation.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest with you for this part here. Let me get myself back on. You have to know it's the process, so it's not personal.
Yeah, it's just hard. It's just hard when you're the one being investigated and being searched and questioned and all of that.
Or in the process of the investigation, maybe you find out secrets that have been exposed. It may relate to the case, it may not, but it could cause a divide. Like, did you know Tommaso went into her house one night? Well, he never told me he went into the house.
Yeah.
What do you mean he went into the house?
Right.
I'm not saying that's the case, just hypothetically. So,
or he was helping mom with her finances, and we never agreed to that. And I mean, all kinds of things could happen.
So you want the honesty up front, and you got to let the process play out. And again, if no one did anything wrong, then no one did anything wrong. There's no judgment here, because the police are going to ask. Remember, guys, it's not so much about the answers; it's the questions that matter. So I think that there could be some questions that, you find out things that you may not know. But again, everybody has secrets.
Oh, yeah.
You just got to know in the end, unless they're outright responsible, you got to try to maintain that connection even through this hardest part of the process. And the last question, so this is basically if Nancy could hear this, as we talk about Bitcoin, deadlines, negotiation strategies, and media narratives, it's easy to forget the center of this story, an 84-year-old mother and grandmother who, until a few days ago, was going to church, visiting her kids, and living what should have been a quiet life. Savannah has said the light is missing from our lives, and the family's video keeps coming back to who Nancy is as a person and not just as the victim in a headline. I just want to show you a picture of Nancy because I forgot to do that in this one. Nancy Guthrie. Sorry about that, guys, because she is currently missing. So let me just get her picture out there. Maybe I'm sure everybody knows it by now. There she is, everybody's mom. So
like a lovely person.
Yeah. They say people that know there's not one bad thing being said about her. For families, sometimes it helps to flip the perspective and ask if Nancy could watch what's happening right now, her children on camera, the investigators working her case, the public talking about her. What would she want them to know or to remember about how to keep going? That question can anchor them when everything else feels completely out of their control. So if Nancy Guthrie could somehow hear this conversation, what would you want to say directly to her based on everything you know about cases like this and everything you've seen her family do to try to bring her home?
Well, one thing that I would want if I were in her shoes is I would want my children to go on and live their lives and love each other and not sort of take what happened to me as something that, influences every day of their lives. But that's easier said than done. I mean,
It's a possibility.
it would be tough for the kids, but if I were the mom, I would want them to enjoy their lives, but it's a tough ask.
You know, it's very, I think it's a good question, though. I don't think it's something we have the answer to, but do we ever ask ourselves what the person who's been taken hostage would want? And I think I want that's a question when you're thinking about what you should do. Would your mother want you to pay them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, would your mother want you to open that door? And that is a great question to ask, because her mother is a very strong individual as well.
Yeah.
And I think her mother would want them to know that whatever choice they decided to make, she would know that the choice was made out of love.
Yeah. And for 84 to be living independently, she had to be a strong woman.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the funny thing about all this, love is not the impossibility here. You know, let's just put it out there. Like, you know, the choices are the impossibility, but whatever choice you make is still going to be made out of love, because sometimes it's the love that will get you to say no, but the love is coming from the other side. Like, I may, in my mind, I may want to give the kidnappers everything because I want my mom back. I love her. That's my perspective. But my mom's perspective may be, don't do it. So now the love to make that choice of holding my ground, it's coming from what my mother would want.
Right. Yeah.
So now I'm doing things as she would want it to be. And now removing myself away from the guilt of that choice, because this is how my mother would want it. My mother would not want me to make that risk and open up the door for, you know, once you pay them, they got what they wanted. Mom could be taken out anyway. And now you're giving up $6 million. Right. And it's not that you're equating a life for money, but the value of the choice behind it could leave you vulnerable to it happening again. Because now we know you have it. What's to stop us from taking Annie?
Or somebody else from doing it to somebody else. Does it work?
Does it work? Hey, anything you'd like to say in closing? This was a great dialogue.
I have heard from some viewers, so I'd love to hear from you again. You can come visit me at deniseschoenwall.com. Love to hear from you.
Yes, and real quick, the books you have on the market right now?
Yeah, I've actually heard from some viewers. Elephants Don't Marry Giraffes, which is about relationships, and Healing Your Body by Mastering Your Mind.
Yes. And guys, if you ever get a chance, please check out the books. They're great reads. Guys, if you like the content, I do have Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. Link to that's in the description as well at the top of the YouTube channel. Again, this video was made in the context of a kidnapping. It may not be the case, but I do believe there's some valuable lessons here. So we're going to kind of ride that momentum to see what lessons we can give out to. I'm hoping nobody faces this, but I think it gives you an understanding a little bit more of, you know, what happens when we're facing a situation like this, and how it's not just black and white. And from a distance, we could say one thing, but if you're being in it, these are a lot of the concerns that are happening behind the scenes, and all we see is the end result of those concerns. I mean, if you look at Savannah and just the family itself, you could see the end result. I think this last video, I see frustration, I see some defeat, but and a plea for the public for help. But I think the frustration I see is because now it's becoming like an everyday thing. It's already moving on to the second week.
It's taking too long.
Yeah. Like what the like it goes, what do you want? What do you want? And then it's like, what the fuck do you want? You know, exactly. It's gonna shift gear because you're not answering me. I've been knocking on the door, you're not answering me. Now you got my mother there, you know, and
right. I've had enough.
I've had enough, you know, I've had enough. Sadly here though, that's what they want.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Take care, guys. Stay safe.